Welcome to the Nashville Money Guys podcast. My name is Brandon. Normally there's three of us, but I am alone because the other two guys don't care because our podcast has like 97 followers on YouTube, which is kind of our primary place that we are posting it. If you would like them to come back, that sounds mean. That's not actually why they're ignoring it. They're just ignoring it because it's been difficult for us all to get together. We are primarily a real estate investing focused podcast. Today, I'm going to get a little bit different. And what I wanted to talk about today was Google search terms, which sounds so boring. Don't click off. I know it sounds boring, but I think it's fascinating. Basically, looking at some of the trends in what people are looking at. Like one of the tidbits that I found was so interesting when I looked up how to start investing or how to invest. Sorry, I'm bumping the mic and that's going to be loud. I apologize. When I looked up how to start investing, there was a huge spike as soon as people started getting COVID checks like sent to them, which I guess that makes sense. And that's a good thing because people were like, oh, now I have money that I wasn't expecting to get. And it's probably makes sense that I put this somewhere. So, I guess that is a good thing. But what I found interesting as well is when I started doing kind of like real estate investing searches inside of Google Trends, what I found was certain states that I was surprised were as popular as they were. Like New York kept consistently coming up. Now, it's not people asking about investing in the state of New York, but what it is people in New York searching for the term how to start real estate investing in real estate, investing in single family houses. Like I did a number of these searches and the state of New York was always in the top 5. Another one that was interesting is Washington, D.C., is also really frequently in that top 5. You know, the area around DC, that area is extremely wealthy, like the wealthiest in the country. So it may just be that those types of people that have a lot of money that are like in the government area are kind of interested in real estate investing, which is maybe scary. Maybe they should have less money. I don't know. We don't have to go into the politics right now. Here's one thing I wanted to go through that I think is interesting. What are the things that are trending right now on Google? And then how does that pertain to what, like if you're trying to better yourself, what should you be looking up versus what people are Googling? And I think this is so funny. So this is just daily. So number 1 is Baltimore Bridge, which makes sense. Like that bridge, if you haven't seen it, by the way, huge tanker truck just slams right into a bridge and destroys the bridge. Like it's a tragedy. There's people that died and it's going to decimate that port for a while as they're trying to kind of figure out how to pull all that out. So you will add to the Google searches, I'm sure, by going and checking that out. Number 2, Iowa women's basketball. Number 3, RFK Jr., which I imagine is because he made his VP announcement today. Number 4, Ronna McDaniel. That's a funny one. She's the former head of the RNC, the Republican National Committee. She was booted by the RNC and then she was hired by NBC. I think it was NBC and MSNBC. But then a bunch of the anchors. See, maybe this isn't that funny because I know all this stuff. I don't know the Iowa women's basketball, but like all the rest of this stuff, and it's because I read my news on Twitter. Maybe I'm just getting kind of a general, like I'm not Googling it. Although I do think I Googled the actual bridge wreckage. Let's keep going. Powerball drawing. That kind of makes sense. Powerball drawing has 50,000 plus searches on Google. Number 6 is Shakira. Number 7 is Flair, which I don't know what that means. Number 8 is NYPD officer shot. That's obviously horrible. Number 9 is Dante DiVincenzo. That's a sports thing. I apologize. I'm not a sports guy, so I don't know. Number 10 is Gonzaga women's basketball. So really nobody's looking up. It's not like a mass thing of people wanting to learn how to invest. Like it's a lot of like kind of current culture things, but sports and politics were 2 of the things that people are Googling the most, like just as general categories, sports and politics. Politics and sports fall into similar categories in my mind. I love watching all the political stuff because to me, it feels like a sport. And that's so messed up. And I get that because it's like the red team versus the blue team, but it's actually the fate of the country. That's kind of, that's kind of like in the balance. But for me, that's been a really interesting thing to watch. I don't watch basketball. I don't watch baseball, but politics is like sports for me. March Madness is going on right now, so I'm sure that's one of the reasons that basketball is really popular. I just find it curious what people are actually searching. So I pulled the 5-year for the term real estate investing, just the 5-year broad picture of the country. What are the top states that are searching real estate investing? And we've got New York, Washington, D.C., Hawaii, Texas, Utah, Colorado, California, Florida, Georgia, and Maryland. Now, again, that's not people that are asking about investing in those states. It's people in those states making those searches. Hawaii was surprising to me because that means that there were so many Google searches going out of the tiny state of Hawaii that it ranked 3rd on this list over 5 years. There's just a crap ton of money in Hawaii, I guess. That makes sense. New York, Washington, D.C., I think it's the same reason, just tons of money. Texas, obviously tons of people in Texas, so, and plenty of money. Utah. I know that there's been a lot of people that have been buying real estate in Utah, like fleeing California and Washington, Oregon. But the actual searches from inside of Utah, that's interesting to me. So now here's what I did. I changed the parameters to go from a 5-year picture. So it's taking all the accumulative data over 5 years and just doing a 90-day search. And within 90 days, what we had was number 1 was Arizona. Arizona wasn't even on this list for the 5-year period. But right now, in the last 90 days, there are more Google searches for real estate investing in Arizona. Number 2 is New York. Number 3 was Oklahoma. Oklahoma was also not on that list. Number 4, Maryland, which was on there. Number 5, South Carolina. South Carolina wasn't on the original list. California, Ohio, not on the original. North Carolina, not on the original. Georgia, and Virginia. Fascinating. Come closer. So another thing that I think another thing that's interesting that's going on right now is the NAR settlement. So the National Association of Realtors had to pay like $500 million in fines, which I don't quite understand. Like, I've done some research into this, and they're like, they're colluding to basically have the buyers and the sellers agents, they're colluding to get the buyers agents paid. In the state of Tennessee, there is no expectation that there is a mandated percent that the buyer's agent is getting paid. So, and maybe it's broker dependent. I'm not a realtor, so I may be just completely talking out of my ass as well. But my wife is a realtor, and they do want you to say, we will participate with buyer's agents. But there's no fixed amount of commission that they're saying we will give you this much unless you agree with the person who is listing the house. And the person who is listing the house, typically like 3% for the selling agent, 3% for the buyer's agent. Just because something has been around for a long time and you say that's generally the way it is, that's fine. That doesn't mean that it must be that way. It means that you can negotiate. It doesn't mean that it has to be this way. But here's what I found interesting, and I'm going to find it on Instagram here. I saved a video because there was a gal who posted, I'll have to go look back on my wife's where I sent it to her. There was a gal who posted as a realtor, and she was a listing agent, and she was essentially saying, I am not going to do your paperwork. I found it, so I'm gonna play it right here, and I'll overlay it in.
Good question. Why do we need a buyer's agent if we can go straight to the listing agent and look at all the homes online? Here's the answer to that. In New Mexico, we're drafting a new form that we're going to be giving to unrepresented buyers when we are the listing agents, and it outlines everything that we are not going to be doing for you. So it starts with, we're not going to be providing you opinions of value. of advice. We're not going to be assisting you in evaluating counteroffers. We're not going to even assist you in drafting an offer or any offer notices or any other information.
Yes, you
so
are.
you're on your own to write your own offers.
No, you're not.
And New Mexico forms are not publicly available.
That's the reason.
We're not going to be able to help you with any relevant market information, give you any information related to any contractual duty you may have, or help you meet the deadlines for your duties. Right? We're not going to be assisting you in the completion of those obligations that you're required to under the purchase agreement.
Yes, you will.
And we're also not going to be providing you with information on any third-party vendors.
You will, because you want money. You will.
Inspectors, mortgage companies, insurance companies. We are not going to help you get to the closing table.
Yes, you will.
Anymore in any way. So if you agree to be an unrepresented buyer, you're agreeing to do all of that by yourself.
No, you're not. So she's really smug, which I get it. Like what she doesn't want to do is she doesn't want to do a bunch of work that she perceives she's not being paid for. But here's why listing agents are going to get kind of screwed on this if people start going unrepresented. First of all, at the end of like the kind of latter half where she's talking about like not giving you vendors or subcontractors, which would probably be somebody like a home inspector. What you risk at that point as the listing agent is them working with people that you know suck. So it would be in your best interest to offer vendors that you know are good, that are timely, and that do a good job. Like inspectors, we have a blackball list of inspectors that we won't allow in our houses because all they do is scare buyers. Where they just literally go in and they just make the inspection thing seem so insane that we get like $50,000 requests for repairs, where then the next buyer comes in and they're like, yeah, it's $1,000 worth of stuff. Like, no big deal. So as a listing agent, she is going to do that because it still, even though she might not necessarily be getting paid for it, it will benefit her to do it. I just think it's more the attitude that I'm just kind of laughing at in this circumstance, because I know that there's a bunch of agents that feel this way. Like I'm not going to go above and beyond what I need to do to get this deal done because you have decided to not have a buyer agent. But you will, because you don't have a choice. And here's the other reason. What she talked about the state forms and just the regular public not having access to those, your broker is going to require that offers and counteroffers and contracts all be written up on your state papers, which they don't have access to. So who do you think is going to get to write that up? It's going to be you. You, the listing agent. You're the one who's going to get to write that stuff up. Now, you may go back and forth via email for an offer, and there is a chance that the buyer does something silly like doesn't say we need to, this needs to be contingent upon an appraisal. Like, I think that's one that could probably be missed. But what do you think happens if you get to the end of the deal and the appraisal comes back low and the buyer goes, my bank won't give me the money for this? And we didn't check that little box in your contract because I didn't know. Do you think that you get to go, oh, well, if you had a buyer's agent, you would have known that? No, it doesn't help you out at all. That equals your deal doesn't close. It falls apart. You lose the deal, which that's not what you want. Worst case, the worst case would be it falls short of appraisal. They didn't check the appraisal contingency box on the form. And then they just go, well, our bank's not going to give us the money and we don't have the money to make this up. So where are we? And you go, well, my sellers are going to sue for performance. You go, we already told you we don't have the money. We're getting it from the bank. What are you going to sue for? You're going to sue to make me sell my assets to what? To come up with the difference to buy the house? Like, that's just this. It's so short-sighted. It's really funny. So yeah, listing agents. Unfortunately, you guys are there was a couple other things. Like people looking at comps. How many people are you going to think just go into Zillow now and look at the Zestimate on the house and go, wow, we're getting a decent deal because the Zestimate seems kind of high. Or, you know what, the Zestimate says this and then they're offering much lower. And then what are you doing as a listing agent? You're pulling the comps and you're sending them the comps and you're saying, no, here's the comps. Here's the other things that are selling in the neighborhood that are comparable to this one. So there again, you're doing the work. You're doing the work. I don't know why. I have this rather smug attitude toward real estate agents. And my wife is an agent. I have many good friends that are, like one of my best friends in the other Brandon that's on the Nashville Money Guys team is an agent. But I just feel like over the last probably 10 years since the rise of the internet, there is a ridiculous amount of dollars per hour going to agents based on the amount of work. And that basically has been captured due to regulatory capture in essence. So the fact that she says you can't get these forms means I'm a real estate agent. I have the privilege and these forms that are required by every brokerage in the state, you don't have access to, therefore you have to use me. Like that's a regulatory capture thing. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily bad at a certain level, but what isn't captured is now people can go on Realtor.com and Redfin.com and Zillow and all these other sites, Realtrax.com, and they can find houses that are for sale and find houses, comparable sales, all those types of things. And if you get somebody who's just even a little bit savvy, the truth is, one of the things that was so difficult about a real estate agent's job 30 years ago was collecting the data, finding all the houses that had sold, understanding that the product that you're putting out is going to be appropriately priced based on what the comps are. That doesn't exist anymore. People can get on Google and find a good home inspector now. You just go on, go find somebody that's really, got a bunch of star ratings on Google. So the truth is, an agent's job is just not as hard as it used to be. And because of housing prices went up so far, even over the last 5 years, that agents just make a crap ton per transaction. And I get it. The bottom 50% of agents it's like an average of 2.6 deals a year. So it's very, very few deals. Average agent pays, I heard it the other day, was $54,000, $51,000. But what that means is like your price per transaction, so therefore your price per hour is just Looney Tunes high for what it takes to become a real estate agent. So it makes total sense to me that there would be kind of this government crackdown of their perception being, hey, real estate agents are one of the reasons that home prices are super high. Do we think that's the reality? Like, what do you think is going to happen now based on this? Do we really think that homeowners are going to be like, well, I was going to list for $550,000, knowing that I was going to have to pay a 6% commission, but now that I know that I'm not going to have to pay a buyer's agent, and I'll just mark the house off 3%. That's great. And then the new buyer is going to be able to come in and take that home from the seller at a 3% discount. No, that's not going to happen. The seller is going to put that money in their pocket, and then the cycle continues because they're going to go out and look for a new house, and they're going to have to pay. It is human nature for us to be trying to maximize things for our personal benefit, which means if I am selling a home, I want the most amount of money that I can get for it. Duh, right? The reason that we can buy distressed properties, we are still paying the most that someone will perceivably pay for that property. That's something that people don't understand. When I go into a distressed house and I make an offer, I'm not making an offer going, man, we're going to make so much money. What I'm saying is I'm giving you the most amount of money that I can offer and still have a safe deal that is worth my time and effort, my blood, sweat, and tears. So sticking back on the real estate thing, it's going to be interesting to see how this all shakes out. I don't see how this helps housing prices. I do think it's going to inconvenience listing agents a bit, but I also think that the real estate market, if you look at the amount of agents over time, when the cycle comes up, the amount of agents just skyrockets. And then when the cycle shakes down, when there's, like what we've had for the last 18 months where selling houses has become much more difficult, you just see agents just dropping off. And that's kind of where we are in the cycle. So maybe this new basically arrangement may assist in kind of creating a bit more of a balance, although I don't think so. And I don't think it creates more home affordability for new buyers. Another thing that I want to talk about that I think is, it's maybe I don't know that it's risky. I just think it's interesting. So the number of migrants that are entering into certain real estate markets across the country, it's going to be interesting to see what that does for housing pressure, especially on the low end, the affordable end. Because if you think about it, let's say you are the city of New York and you have 185,000 new migrants that have shown up in New York over the last year. You already had a housing crisis. You already had the average cost of an apartment in New York is like $5,500 a month. So anything in that city that was more affordable, there is such high demand for people that are already there, that have jobs, that are already working. And then when you add this block of pressure of 185,000 new people, that is so many people. That's like a third of the population of Nashville. A third of the population of Nashville just arrived in your city in the last year. That is mind-blowing. And I'm not being political about this. What I'm simply talking about is the economic impact of having this mass migration of people all at once, that are 85% of migrants are falling in the bottom 25% of the income of income and skill bracket. So they're competing for low wage jobs and they need low income housing. That there is no city that exists that has that infrastructure in place. So it's going to be super interesting. Like, as a landlord, are there going to be opportunities where the government is having to come in and say, we got to get these people out of these hotels and we've got to get them into more permanent housing. So we're going to create a sector that is Section 9 housing. I don't know what they would call it, probably Section 9. And it's migrant housing, and it's going to be something similar to Section 8, where they're paying a very, very low percentage of, what the government is going to make up. And then as a citizen, what is that going to do to the people that are like, wait a minute, why? I don't like paying my rent. I have a hard time paying my rent. I don't know. It's just going to be so interesting to see what happens. And then just thinking about it, like, selfishly from an economic perspective, how do you exploit something like this? And when I say exploit it, what I mean is all of this is a game. And if we're playing a game, even though we might not necessarily agree that the game is fair or good or ethical or moral, can we hypothesize on how to be the best version of a game player that you possibly can? And then you can decide, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, we don't have Section 8 rentals because I don't want to rely on the government to pay our rents. And there's a number of reasons, but we don't have Section 8 rentals. So would we do Section 9? By the way, I'm making up Section 9. Don't start Googling Section 9 rentals. But I think that's coming. I don't see another way. And so now, where are those funds coming from? And there are already proposals that are on the table where they are talking about taking a fee from landlords, basically at the federal level. The proposal was if you have 15 or less, you would pay, whatever, $1,000 a year per unit, and then it would go up from there. That fee would go to affordable housing, Section 8, Section 9. Like, what are we talking about here? I don't think. First of all, if they were able to get the money, that it's not going to actually go where they're saying it's going to go. It's going to go somewhere else. But then they'll devise some program. But when you talk about actual physical units built, that's the other dilemma that we have. It's not even just, we have all the money for housing. Where's the housing? What areas have 185,000 extra vacant housing units ready to go? There's a reason that they're getting put up in hotels right now. And that's because hotels get full and they get empty. And typically it's from people that are out of town that are moving in that are visiting the area and leaving. So in Nashville right now, if you had 30,000 people show up in Nashville, it would absolutely turn low-income housing on its head. It would absolutely, the amount of pressure that there would be to fill those low-income units would be so astronomical that overnight landlords are going to go, okay, I could get $1,500 for this before, and now I'm going to charge $1,800, $1,900, $2,000, because that's what happens when there is more demand than there is supply. So the only way out of this, the only way is more supply. That's it. And if we're going to be importing migrants into certain areas, it seems to me like you would want to plan for the supply. You would want to make sure that in short order, you had enough supply to house people, or you are going to have an absolute shit show on your hands. There's a light in my eyes when I say that, because I delight in the consequences of silly policy. I think that some of the policy of importing people in mass into certain areas is so obviously silly. And I understand why. I understand that people think that it's beneficial, but it is absolutely a luxury belief. It is a belief that is born out of, well, it should be this way. This would be great. Like, I get it. We see all the devastation and crazy stuff that's happening in certain places around the world. And we go, we want to help these people. But you're not helping the people that are in New York right now. If you've seen what's happening, watch a couple of videos on what's going on in New York. There's no housing for them. They're moving into shelters for 30 days or hotels for 30 days, and now they're booting them out. And they're spending $300 to rent in, basically people are breaking into commercial spaces and setting up, like, it looks like an old school movie of like an orphanage. There's just rows of bunk beds next to each other, and people are paying $300 a month to live in these facilities inside these places that maybe it's got like one bathroom and there'll be like 75 people in there. It's absolutely insane. It's completely unsustainable. And it is so obvious that that was what was going to happen. So clear, so obvious that it is almost laughable if it wasn't so tragic. So as a landlord and as a property owner and as somebody who is interested in investing, there's two things in my mind that I'm thinking. Number one, I am viewed as an enemy and not as a housing provider. They view me as a leech. They view me as usurious, that I'm not providing a service. And number two, they're going to try to get me to pay for this stuff. Because I am the leech and the user, why would I not have to pay for it? And so that's a consideration, I think, as you are starting to invest or as you're continuing to invest. What types of areas are you interested in investing in? Because it is very clear to me, very clear, that in the next 5 years, unless something is done at the federal level, we will 100%, there will be federal fees attached to being a landlord that are not properly used. They'll probably raise hundreds of millions of dollars, and they'll at the end of the year be like, we built 80 units in the desert of Nevada, and there's no infrastructure around it. Like, it'll just be some, kind of absurd thing. And that could very well be the Republicans that do it, or very well could be the Democrats. I don't know. So trending topics, kind of interesting. I don't know. Talking about the NAR stuff, I think is really fascinating, just to see the shakeup in the real estate world with agents. And then probably my favorite topic of the day for sure has been thinking through landlording and the migrant crisis. I find it to be so interesting. And like I said earlier, I'm sure the guys are going to watch this and they're going to be like, what are you doing? Why are you talking about this? Next week, maybe we'll pull our toes away from the cliff's edge a bit. Maybe not. Hey, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Again, this is Nashville Money Guys podcast. I'm Brandon McDonald. If you're interested in hard money loans and you're in kind of the southeast of the United States, go ahead and check us out, NashvilleMoneyGuys.com. Thanks for watching.